Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're gonna be going over the Overwatch 2 tier list. A lot of you guys have been wanting me to make a video going over like what heroes I think are the best and what heroes are the worst, or kind of need some sort of rework and or a buff. But let's go ahead and hop right into it. So S is the best and D is the worst for this little tier list that we have over here. So keep in mind, this is like my personal thoughts. There's no like official like tier list. Obviously there's never gonna be one, but I think most people will agree with a lot of these. But if you disagree, feel free to go ahead and let me know via the comments. So first off, S being the best, D meaning that they need some sort of rework or a change to maybe one or two or three of their skills if they happen to have that, because 5v5 does change up things quite a bit, and there was a most recent update that did change some of the stuff in Overwatch 2, specifically the supports. But let's go and kick it off. I'm just going to go from top to the bottom over here on this list. We're going to select Ball, Hammond, Wrecking Ball. I'm going to go ahead and put him in like what I consider like the B tier. B tier is going to be where I would say that the character is still like viable. Maybe it's a situational character, maybe a very specific map would make them good, or perhaps they'd be better if you happen to have a team composition that can support them. The thing that I don't really like with Ball, if you don't really have coordination, the ball might wander off on their own, and it really hurts the team. It doesn't really help out when your ball's doing its own thing. When you need to be sitting on payload, you need some sort of giant meat shield to sit there, and Ball doesn't really excel at playing at that playstyle. So that's why I'm going to put him in like the B tier. So he's kind of niche, or if you're really good with the character in a B tier or a very specific map, I think they could be good too. But like overall, this is just my personal opinion from someone that's peaked at 4068. That is my peak, by the way, because I think it is kind of important to also mention like the player's peak is, because someone in gold might have a completely different opinion than someone in diamond or silver or bronze or whatever the case may be, right? And I'm also considering this to be like for solo queue as well for the most part. But yeah, Ball can still be pretty viable. Now next up, I'm gonna put Ana in the best category, the S tier. The reason why Ana is so good, if there is a Doomfist on the other team, you can literally make it so he cannot play. A good Ana will absolutely destroy in the upcoming game for Overwatch 2, at least right now as a beta, because the anti-grenade, it just got nerfed, the sleep got nerfed. She's the healer that actually got, I would say, the most nerfs, but she's still easily one of the best, and that is simply due to so many factors of the character being able to just stop a tank from playing completely. And there are some channel abilities, specifically on Doomfist, he really needs to be able to like get his charge. He needs to be able to block so he can actually punch and stun. Or if you are also playing some of the other tanks, for example, like Winston, if I dive in, because Brig doesn't have like a stun anymore and like Mccree doesn't have a stun anymore, there are certain characters that really benefit if there is no Ana. Ana really keeps the game in check, or if there's like a solo Roadhog, if you put him to sleep or anti him, it is absolutely huge. And just the anti-grenade in general plus nano is just so big for Overwatch 2, especially since a lot of the tanks are just a little bit better in the game. So like if you nano a tank, usually, depending on the tank of course, you will usually win the fight unless they happen to have some other thing to counter it, especially on something like a Winston where you could just like, you know, hit lots of different enemies. So Ana is still very powerful. I'm gonna put her in the S tier just because both of the abilities that he has are super good, plus the ulti is good. And again, it's just because a lot of times I feel like in the fights, whoever loses their tank first basically loses, in my personal opinion. It happens very often. It's not like 100% of the time, but most of the time, whoever loses their tank first generally will lose like the team fight. Next up, Ashe, I'm gonna consider a very solid pick as well. The reason why I consider her really great is because the Dynamite Bob is still really good, even though he got like a 200 HP nerf. She's just a solid hero overall, just because her entire kit is just very good, being able to take high ground. And on top of that, just she's never really been bad in my opinion. I've always felt like Ashe was a really solid character, other than like the reload kind of sucks with her, but that's just like the way that the character works. But next up, Baptiste, I would say he is a solid pick, specifically because Immortality Field is still Immortality Field. Fantastic ability, and there's really no change to Bap, other than he got like an extra like couple set of ammo, but that's like the biggest change with Bap. And I'd still say he's a very solid pick just because Immortality is still Immortality. Bastion, I would say he can be pretty good. He could be maybe like a niche pick, or a very skilled player can pick him, but Bastion is still very viable, especially against Winston. I've noticed that in the matchup versus like Winston, if Bastion just sets up, he will just melt the shield, and then Winston, what is he gonna do? He has no like other thing. So I still think Bastion is still maybe even in the A tier, depending if you can have a pocket or not, but specifically against certain matchups, Bastion is just absolutely fantastic for those reasons. He doesn't have the self heal, but if you guys haven't seen the gameplay of my Bastion, like check it out. I'll try to pin some of these videos that I have that mention some of the stuff, but I don't want to talk too much about each individual character, as this will get quite long if we do that. So I'm gonna put Brig in the C tier category because she lost her stun. So C is where like they're not as good as the B tier, but you can still be like okay with the characters. But like if you lose one team fight, your team will be like, hey, yo, can you swap? Can we change this? This is where people start to complain about like your character picks. And I would say Brig kind of falls under this category. Again, this is for, again, solo queue, but if you have very specific comps, yeah, she could be a lot better in specific comps. But like, again, her stun was what made her so powerful, keeping the game in check. I mean, you could easily put her into B tier, but again, I'm talking about like solo queue. So like sometimes your teammates just don't follow up, or if you're playing a team comp that like wants to sit super far back and you know, Brig, you know, she just doesn't have the best heal when there's not like stuff in front of your face. And I feel like a lot more people are playing this game more range than like up close in your face. I haven't really seen that many people play Tracer. Genji is still very, very powerful, but a lot of like the DPS characters like to play at a medium to longer-ish range. At least that's how I kind of feel, with the exception of maybe like if you have like a Doom, a Genji in your comp, maybe even a Lucio, then yeah, certain things can work. But are you gonna really run Lucio Brig for heals and run a rush down in like solo queue? It might be a little bit more difficult to coordinate. Next up though, Mccree, I would say he definitely needs a buff. I already dropped my video on him. I feel like without the stun, the DPS doesn't fear him at all. Like, yeah, he's just gonna shoot, but so is every other character. Like, you don't have to really do too much with him, because with his ability of his stick, right, like you can run a lot of different characters and get rid of that. Let's say you're playing Mei, you can obviously freeze. If you are playing Tracer, you can recall. If you're playing certain heroes like Reaper, you can also use an ability. There's tanks that can use other abilities too, like you can Zarya. It's just because there's a delay on his new magnetic grenade thing instead of flashbang, I feel like he really loses a lot of his power. So that's why I would say he needs some sort of buff or rework. If they give him back flashbang, I would easily put him much higher, but because of that reason, I just don't think there's a point to playing Mccree. He needs some sort of change, in my personal opinion. Doomfist, you guys are seeing gameplay of him right now. I honestly don't like how the new Doomfist plays. I've been actually watching a lot of other Doomfist players' thoughts on it, because like at one point, I grinded Doomfist to Masters, and I really like the character. He takes a lot of skill floor and skill ceiling to like actually be very useful for your team, but now he doesn't really feel like that. Like, I hate the ability of just blocking, sitting there. It's not fun compared to how he was before. Before, he was like a combo-based character. Now it's like, okay, I absorb and then I punch. But if you get matched up against an Orisa, you get absolutely rolled. I would say maybe a niche player can make use out of him, but like in a solo queue environment where you don't get to call out anything, I feel like if you lose one team fight, one or two team fights, this is talking about like in the higher ranks in the game too. Even lower ranks, people complain. If the other team has an Orisa and you're doing this, or if they have an Ana or Orisa, automatically makes Doom like almost unplayable. I was watching what there's another content creator, Chipsa, and he was saying the exact same things. So I was like, okay, good. I'm glad that someone can share, you know, the same opinions that I have. That's like a really high ranked player, because I felt like if the other team had an Orisa, they would just throw the spear at me again and again and again. I could not like play. Or if the Ana would just use her anti-grenade when I'm doing block or I'm doing charge, it just feels bad. At least, especially when you're charging up and you hit them for like 60 damage, it's just not fun. At least from my personal experience. So like C or B, like if you're really good, maybe with team comp, but like I still think there's much better heroes overall, versus maybe they can do like just increase the damage of like the troll charge up. It just feels super underwhelming to sit there, charge it up, and you're like, oh, I'm one shot, and then you just like no damage. So yeah, C or B for me on Doom. It can kind of be swapped. Diva, I'd say, is a pretty solid pick just because she has an insane amount of armor. In fact, like I actually want to like load my Diva gameplay. Okay, so we got some Mei gameplay here. I'm gonna just swap between some of the gameplay that I had that I'm working on like uploading, but we'll talk about Mei in a second. But Diva, I would consider her pretty solid. The reason why is just because, again, the armor that she has is just really great, and because there's only one tank, her ultimate actually has a lot more value in Overwatch 2 compared to the previous one. Echo really hasn't had that much change. She just has like a small like nerf change. I would say she's still like a pretty decent character. Like A or B can be really easy to fit in Echo. There's really no changes to talk about with Echo. Diva obviously got a little bit of a buff, so the DM is a little bit longer, like the defense matrix, and again, because the enemy teams do not have two tanks, you're going to consistently get a lot more Diva bomb kills, especially if you're a really good Diva player. Genji over here, we actually just had some Genji gameplay. I think I opened up with that. I would say Genji is still like in the B category, even though there's like less CC, that makes him a lot more viable. The thing is that you really need to be good with your blades, because Genji is basically played for his blades, right? And across the board, the ultimate changes on Overwatch 2, you're going to be building them up a lot slower. I definitely noticed that. So Genji, that's why I consider him in the B tier. Like, he's still pretty good, or if you're a really good player, he definitely has a nice like benefit to him. I consider both the snipers. I'm just going to put both the snipers here because it's for like the same reasons. If you get a snipe and a pick, because there seems to be a little bit less mercy play, I've noticed that in Overwatch 2. It's because it might be harder to kind of get that res when you don't happen to have those like 2 tanks to go push up, or like if the tank dies, usually like the mercy wants to res the tank ASAP, but that doesn't really happen in Overwatch 2. So like getting a pick is really big, I feel like, in Overwatch 2, because if there's less players, you're impacting the game more when you literally one-shot someone, and especially since range is so powerful in Overwatch 2, because again, you don't necessarily have the double tanks to close the gaps consistently. I feel like snipers are very, very good, and that's why I selected both of those for that reason. Let's go ahead and swap over to, we got some Sombra gameplay here. Junkrat I actually feel like is really good because there's no double shield, specifically on like Icon Wall or any map with like a very tight choke. He could just sit there, spam, get easy kills. We didn't actually make this video a little faster. I just noticed we're like 11 minutes in. I still got so many characters to talk about, but I really feel like Junkrat's a pretty solid character for Overwatch 2. Again, it's because less shields equals consistently just throwing down some grenade launcher shots. You can get kills pretty easy with Junkrat, especially if you can follow it up. What I've noticed, which is pretty interesting, is like if you happen to have like an Ashe, a Moira, anything that does like AoE damage, like Moira could throw the orb and then Junkrat could start spamming, and any targets that get low, like if you're just spamming it in an area, it can be very powerful. You can delete teams very fast if you can get like that kind of setup where like you have things that can do a bunch of just damage, or like let's say Reinhardt throws a fire strike, you followed up with a shot with Junkrat, like you can kill things really fast with just basically any other thing doing damage that can do even AoE, or just something that just swings by, if that makes sense. So I think Junkrat's a pretty solid character for those reasons. Again, because there's one less tank to absorb. I think Lucio's one of the better healers. I'd put him in like A or B. Like rushing down and having mobility is really, really good, especially on like the push map. I've noticed that map, especially for solo, a lot of people just like run in again and again. So Lucio is great for like the respawns, as well as like his ultimate's still pretty viable. Like I like it a lot. But yeah, Lucio, really good character, just specifically for speed boost. He did technically take a nerf recently, but I still think he's in like the A tier. He's really, really good. Mei, I would say please buff. I'm working on my Mei gameplay to upload very soon, but basically Mei can cut off the tank. It's like situational technically on some maps, so you can say maybe B tier for some maps, but overall, if you cannot freeze the target, they usually just get away. Like I try to bully the tanks as hard as possible with Mei, because you're just not going to be able to do enough DPS to make her effective, in my personal opinion, on most of the other DPS rosters, at least at like a higher level. Like at the lower level, where maybe aiming is not most consistent, she's a little bit more generous, right? And she slows the target down. But when you're talking about like top players, like if you're running Mei into any other character, they're just going to roll you way faster than you're going to be able to get out the DPS, if that makes any sense. Without the freeze, Mei loses a lot of value, because what she was good for is like cutting off the tank, then freezing, and everyone will just burst down the tank. But now, since that can't happen, the tank is free to just use abilities and do stuff. So I think Mei needs some sort of rework or a buff on something. I know she can like do the ice block. I don't know if they made that change from like the experimental, where if she like drops the block on someone, it one-shots them. But even then, I just think that she needs some sort of change. She actually got a nerf, which is really weird too, on her walls, but it's because there's one less player. So I believe they have 250 HP versus like 400, which is what I had before. I think Mei needs some sort of buff though, honestly. Anyways, next up, Mercy. Situational, maybe on a map, or if a player really only plays Mercy. I mean, I still think Mercy's like okay. She's not like terrible and like unplayable. It's just, it's harder to get that res for sure, and she's a lot less more impactful in the game, because the res is the only reason why you play Mercy. Like, do you play Mercy for ult? No, like Ana's ult impacts the game so much more, or like even Lucio's ult impacts the game a lot more, or even like Moira can be very impactful with her ult now, just because there's one less tank. You can just melt people. You throw the damage orb, you ult, you can easily get maybe 2 kills with it, and that's huge. The more, even if you get like 1 kill with some of the ults in this game, can be changing for the team fights, because there's just less players in the game, right? Moira, I would say, is a pretty solid pick. Like I consider her like in the B-ish tier. I would say Moira's better than Mercy even, but again, it depends on the team comp. If you guys are playing against snipers, then Mercy's probably still going to be good because she can res behind cover, but pretty solid. I'd say like Lucio, Moira, probably like some of the best healers. Obviously, I already put Ana like at the top. Next up though, we got Orisa. So Orisa over here, I would say she is one of the best tanks in the game. Like when I get an Orisa, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so glad we have an Orisa. Quite parched. But Orisa's great because, well, yeah, she just kind of sits on like the point. She can do what a tank kind of needs to do. She can push when she needs to push. She can disrupt when she needs to, when like say someone uses an ability. She can do a little spinny thing. Great for that. I'm gonna go and swap off the Sombra gameplay so we don't sit and watch the same gameplay for too long. But I think Orisa's just so great. Her ult's a little bit weak versus good players because they can just move out of the way. But like overall, Orisa does a lot of damage. Her spear is just fantastic. Literally shuts down Doom, shuts down a lot of different things, and you can secure kills quite easily if they get knocked locked into a wall with the spear pin. Okay, this is gonna be interesting. This is where some people may disagree. I would consider at the highest rank of the game probably A, but in like the middle-ish range, honestly, Farrah is like S tier. If you guys haven't seen my video that talks about her secret buff, to sum up the secret buff, what it does is it makes it so anyone that gets hit by her ability, the screen shakes. So for DPS to consistently be able to hit her, it's really, really difficult. And especially if you pocket this with a Mercy, she is so incredibly good, because if she takes out the one hit scan and you have no other hit scan on your team, it can be a nightmare to deal with Farrah. So I would consider Farrah in the A to S tier. Again, if you're looking at like the lower ranks, basically diamond and under, I would consider S tier. But like in the higher ranks, she becomes a little bit less valuable, if that makes any sense, because like generally the DPS will be able to aim better, or the Ana will just deal with you. So like she can fluctuate between any of these tiers. Like it could be maybe map dependent, but like I would probably put her in like solid A tier. Like she's really good. Reaper's like okay. The thing with Reaper is like if they happen to have, let's say, more tanky characters that you can just like destroy, because armor actually got a kind of a buff in Overwatch 2. Just reduces the damage by a flat amount, versus like the way it worked before was like it would reduce it by a set amount of number, and then if it was under a certain amount, then it would do half the damage. It's kind of weird. I'll link a video if I remember. It was by CarQ. It kind of explains everything, but I believe they just take 30% less damage, and that's by all sources by armor. So like if that anything has Roadhog, obviously yeah, Reaper is excellent for that. But Reaper was great versus like double tanks. They actually didn't nerf Reaper, so like he's okay. Like he can be good, and he can do a lot of work against like Zenyatta, because Zenyatta doesn't really have anything other than his like kick that he got now. But if you just like go up to him and you just phase out at the right time, you can two-shot Zen. And there's a lot more people playing Zen now because Zen got buffed, but Reaper's just a fantastic character still, even with the nerfs, but not like he was probably a little bit higher before they nerfed him. But I still think he's like good. Like he's situational, maybe like skill dependent. Like if you're really good with the character, you can definitely make some great use out of Reaper. Next up, I would consider Reinhardt in like the B tier. Like he's a pretty solid tank. Like overall with the double fire strikes, is the new change with Reinhardt. Still like him. And shatters are really good as well. I'd say he's a really solid pick. Maybe even like I'd almost consider him A tier if you have like a good team comp for him. But it's specifically because he can shield at like any moment faster than almost any other character. If you look at the tank roster right now, like Sigma can't like throw the thing like instantly. Diva might not be able to block like every single thing, but Ryan, I like him for being able to always have that like ability to shield for the most part, unless of course breaks. But good players will never let it break. You just, you know, once it gets low, you put it away for a few seconds. But I'd say Ryan is great because again, you can shatter a lot more consistently because they might not have a tank that can block shatter. Next up, Roadhog. I feel like he still needs a buff. Like he's so bad against specifically Orisa as well as Ana. Like if they have, these are the S tier characters and they're in a lot of the games, and if they have these, you're just gonna have a bad time as Hog. So and on top of that, Hog, like he's a tank and he doesn't really have any tools other than he heals, right? That's his only tool to stop damage, and that's if they are shooting him. He can't really help out his teammate other than putting his literal body in front, which every tank can do anyways, right? I mean, yeah, if you can actually get a hook off and get a pick, it can be pretty big because there's less players, but I feel like there's other tanks that can offer. Orisa can sit at range, hit the spear, and secure a kill anyways, right? And that has like a faster cooldown than Hog. Orisa's spear, I'm calling it right now, that will actually get a nerf or a damage reduction because it's consistent. Next up, Sigma. I think Sigma's pretty decent too. I'd say like if you're a good player with Sigma, he's still good, but not like overpowered or anything like that. He's solid. But like as a single tank, the problem that I have with him is sometimes you really want to shield something, and like that like 1 second cooldown is just annoying to deal with. Sojourn, I would say that she's kind of meh. Even though they buffed the like width of her ability by double, I still find it inconsistent to land these shots. So that's why I'm gonna put her in the C tier. As like if you're not doing good with her instantly, people will ask you to swap after like a one team fight, and that's because like she has less damage than Soldier. She's not hit scan, and on top of that, I feel like her ult is very difficult compared to other characters' ultimates, if that makes any sense. Because yeah, I mean like you still have to be very skillful with her. I mean at the end of the day, if you're really good with, you know, landing those shots, why not just play Widow? Why not just play Soldier? She's a weird mix though. Like she's in between. Like yeah, she can one shot people, but she can also kind of deal damage. But I like her ability that throws a little orb on the ground more than anything. But it's got too long of a cooldown, and so I'd say like if you're really good with her, you probably would be better off playing something else. That's kind of why the C tier category is. Soldra, I consider him pretty decent. I was originally putting him here, but with the most recent nerfs, he's actually here. There's so many instances where like that 1 or 2 shots will absolutely matter for the game. Next up, Sombra. I'd say like Sombra's okay as well. Like still a pretty solid character. Obviously, you gotta have a little bit more coordination if you're gonna use your EMP. You need your team to follow up. It's not like you EMP and the whole team dies, or like because like for example with let's say a good timed Farrah ult, like you kill like you can set it up kind of by yourself, right? Whereas Sombra, you don't really EMP kill the whole team. It's your team kills the whole team like together, if that makes any sense. Next up, Symmetra, I still think needs a buff. Like yeah, she can kind of teleport in, but then she's just gonna get melted. I just feel like she loses a lot of value in the way that her playstyle is, especially since the ult takes a lot longer to charge up. But Symmetra, yeah, she might need a rework or a buff. That's at least my personal opinion. I really didn't mess around with her that much. I played it like once or twice. There's no change to Symmetra though, right? Other than it being 5v5, because there's I guess less shields. Like sometimes people would try her against double shields just because she'd have the ability to charge up, but I still think Symmetra's been weak. Torb, I'd say like is still pretty solid. I mean, with one less tank, right? The turret's gonna get more damage in more consistently. His goo's gonna get blocked a little bit less. So I'd still say Torb is a viable character, and he's still like gonna be pretty consistent. I mean, if anything, he probably received like a little bit of a buff, right, from 5v5 because again, less shields. Tracer actually took a nerf. I think if you don't do good off of Tracer, instantly people will ask you to swap. She does 1 less damage, but like I have not seen that many people play Tracer at all. And it's not like it's because, I mean, technically, if you think about it, like since the CC is like changed a lot, you'd think people would want to play Tracer, but I still think she's relatively weak. There's other characters that can just put more damage up consistently versus her trying to like go flank around the healers because there's only one tank anyways. I'd say like you can put her in the B category, but like I think that if you don't do good immediately, people will just ask you to swap. But like if you got good enough tracking, because she has 1 less damage, which actually makes a pretty big difference for one clipping people. Yeah, that's why I'd probably put her in like the C to B tier. Winston, I think he's okay. You need a team that kind of follows up. Again, he can be countered very easily by Bastion specifically, or just like Junkrat can just start spamming and then like he just loses out. At least that's how I feel. Junkrat actually took a nerf also. I wanted to mention that with his little trap thing, but like it's still pretty solid against Monkey. Next up, Zarya. I think Zarya is like okay too. Like Zarya can actually solo carry. Like if you're looking for a good solo carry tank, I would say Zarya can actually do the job very, very well. I was doing that earlier in some gameplay. And then Zenyatta, I would say maybe B to C. Like overall, he just received buffs in the most recent updates, right? But if you don't do good, and the thing is that with the quick play, like I wish there's supposed to be quick play ammo, but I swear sometimes it's just like I see these plays, I'm like, okay, what rank is this? There's no way this is like Diamond Masters, Grandmasters. Some of these, I don't know, I just feel like they're like bronze, silver. Like there's like zero communication. Like you gotta call out your discords with Zen. I don't know why people don't do that. Again, in ranked, when they eventually add it for Overwatch 2 beta, hopefully that will be addressed, but I feel like they need to do that with Zen for sure. They need to be calling out their discord. So on average solo queue, if you call out your Zens, maybe like B tier, like you gotta be like a really good player with Zen. You gotta call out your Discord specifically. Otherwise, I think that like, I mean, there's no reason not to have Ana. Ana is like the best healer, okay? So what would you follow that up with? Lucio would be, in my personal opinion, one of the better options. I mean, I'm gonna be dropping some insane gameplay of Zen very soon with the new kick. I like that, it's good. But like, it can be kind of hard for Zen Ana. So maybe like Zen Lucio would be great. I'm sorry, Ana Lucio would be like a better like other support. But that's my tier list. You guys can let me know what your thoughts are on it down below. If you guys disagree, definitely let me know why, because I'm kind of curious. And as time goes on, we will update the tier list for Overwatch 2 as they make buffs and nerfs. So if you guys do want to see an updated tier list, perhaps in the future, and this is your first time here, hit subscribe, turn the bell, and you'll definitely see more. But take care. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like on it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And I'm out. Peace.